This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Today's episode is brought to you by TeePublic. And you ever hear about this thing called Black Friday? Well, it's happening at TeePublic. In fact, if you go to teepublic.animaniacast.com this holiday season, you will see some fantastic deals. Shirts as low as $13, and these aren't just any shirts. These are original artist designs featuring Animaniacs, Freakazoid, Pinky and the Brain, and so much more. It's all over at teepublic.animaniacast.com. Each purchase helps support an independent artist and this podcast as well. Plus, you're going to be getting an awesome gift for someone on your list. So head over to teepublic.animaniacast.com today.
And welcome everybody to a Freakazoid episode of the Animaniacast.
Freakazoid, in stereo, where available. And where not available, it's not in stereo. There's nothing we can do about that, so don't blame us. We have no control over it. Call your cable company if there's some sort of a problem, or the local broadcaster. But if they're not giving you stereo and you want stereo, that's your problem, not ours. Don't bug us. Complain to your congressman or Newt Gingrich, like I'm sure he'd care. Ha! But we don't want to get any letters, understand? Good.
And welcome everybody once again to another episode of Freakazoid and Friends. This is the spin-off series of the Animaniacast. We are the only podcast that lets you freak out about Freakazoid. And today we are once again picking a random episode, which also has to be sequentially the fifth episode. Go figure.
It just happens to be.
Yes. We're going to be revisiting all the cultural references and gags, and in the end, we're going to give this episode of Freakazoid a water tower rating. I am Joey, and joining me once again in Los Angeles, it's my brother Nathan.
Never fear, Lord Smoke Meat and Fishes has arrived.
And across the country in Georgia, it's Kelly.
Hello.
Hello. Well, we are once again, we're back to Freakazoid in our discussion. Sometimes we're talking about the Animaniacs, sometimes Tiny Toon Adventures, and sometimes Pinky and the Brain. But today, we're feeling very superhero-ish. We're going to be talking about the one and only Freakazoid. And this
You mean we're not feeling freaky?
Feeling freaky.
Feeling freaky. We're going to talk about Freakazoid, and this is, of course, episode 5 of Freakazoid, which features the two main segments, Foamy the Freakadog, and it was an office visit. Yes, and then we have lots of other little things in it, like an ode to Leonard Nimoy, an emergency broadcast system, conversational Norwegian, and even a little segment talking about how the show is available in stereo where available. So lots of little, things to fill in the gaps and everything. But if someone were to ask you about this episode in just a few words, what would you tell them, Nathan?
It's a cute little doggy. It's a cute doggy. It's a fluffy, squishy face.
You guys are sweet meats. And Kelly, what about you?
It's in stereo where available.
Yes, it is, in fact.
Very important.
Yes. Well, Nathan, tell us, when did this episode first premiere?
Ooh, so this episode premiered on October 7th, 1995, which was less than a week after O.J. Simpson was found not guilty in the infamous O.J. Simpson trial. We learned dogs love to read thanks to PBS's new TV show Wishbone. And,
for a second, let's pause for a second. I thought you were literally going to give us a little fact from like Nova or something. It's like dogs like to read.
Dogs love to read.
Okay, they love to read. Okay.
Because of Wishbone.
Yeah, Wishbone.
And finally, Mariah Carey performs at the Madison Square Garden to promote her new album, Daydream.
Okay, that was a big album. And I do remember Wishbone. I know that. I know, Nathan, I remember you watched it a lot as a kid.
I don't remember watching. I remember not watching it as a kid. But
well, I remember it was on the TV.
I had some bookmarks and a plushie, and I had a Jack Russell Terrier, actually.
Oh, really? You had a Jack Russell Terrier? Well, there you go. They're so cute.
She was.
She loved to read?
The little princess. Sure.
They all do.
It's a fact.
It's what we learned from PBS. Yes. Well, let's go ahead and get into our discussion of today's episode, starting off with the stereo segment. I suppose the cool thing right here is, of course, Joe Leahy reading off the, where it's in stereo, where available, and they just keep panning over the same backdrop over and over and over again, almost like a slow motion Hanna-Barbera repeating background. Like Scooby and Shaggy would always run around, and you'd see like that same door going by all the time. And well, now we have a Freakazoid billboard that just keeps going by at a slow pace.
Interesting tidbit. I never understood what that meant, in stereo where available, until one time one of the Ewok movies was airing on ABC, and my sister got her radio out and tuned it to the correct station, and it was playing through the radio. So I was like, oh, so that's what that means.
Yeah, and
how I learned, it was because with one of the Ewok movies, I want to say it was for Battle for Endor, but I could be wrong. It could have been Caravan of Courage.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't realized that that so many shows, because back in the 80s and 90s, sound was it was just all mono. But if you hooked up your stereo system just right, like there's the AV cords at the back of the box, and you hook those sometimes into the stereo system. I remember when I figured that out, it must have been around in the 90s, when I figured that out and did it, I was like in a brand new world of sound. It was like, oh my gosh. And listening to the Star Wars trilogy and all that stuff with stereo, it was so cool. So, yeah, stereo. Now we're all like 5.1 sound on every single one of our Netflix shows and everything. So, but back in the day, you had to yell at your cable company, apparently. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get into our first major segment, and this is Foamy the Freakadog. And Foamy the Freakadog was written by the one and only Mr. Paul Dini, and it was directed by Ronaldo del Carmen. And Kelly, why don't you tell us what happens here in Foamy the Freakadog?
Okay, well...
Oh, the Freakadog's in the background.
Crazy Indiana. I don't know what he's barking at.
This is good. This is a segment about a dog, and we have a dog barking in the background. He wants to talk to us about it, so keep going.
Indiana Jones. So... Freakazoid is sort of in this kind of like museum of statues or something, and there's one of his dog, and he's fondly recalling Foamy the Freakadog. And so it sort of goes into this flashback, and he's chasing the dog catcher and telling him to stop, and the dog catcher is like careening all over the road and crashing into things, and he finally stops, and all these dogs jump out of the back of the truck. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad I got you to stop before something terrible happened. And, of course, it's mass hysteria all over the place. Dogs and cats living together. Yep. And so he only wanted to point out that there was a broken taillight. And then he issues him a citation, and it's for... Well, he says a ticket. He says, I'm giving you a ticket. And it's for the Jerry Springer Show. And he's like, no, not the Jerry Springer Show. And there's one dog left in the back of the truck. And he's foaming at the mouth. So that's usually not a good sign with dogs. And Freakazoid starts talking to him, telling him he's got sweet meats in him and all sorts of weird stuff. And not endearing himself to the dog at all, and crawls into the back of the truck, and the dog bites him on the head.
Look at the cute little doggy thing. Look at your little chunky face. You have little sweetmeats in you, don't you? Little sweetmeats inside you. If I hug you, they're gonna come out. Little sweet, sweet, sweet. Make a sweet face. Give me smoochy smooch.
And he's like, I think he likes me. So he takes him, and he gives him like a little hairstyle similar to Freakazoid, and give him a costume, and turns him into a sidekick. And
paints him blue. That's so crazy.
I'm sorry?
I said painting him blue was just a funny thing. Just like that poor dog.
Yeah, he seems okay with it. So, for the most part. And so, Freakazoid's all tied up. He's like hooked up to a bomb, and tells the dog he needs to go find the cop on the side of the road. And so the dog starts running. And he's like jumping over cliffs, and he encounters some scorpions and things, and he's a little hesitant, but he manages to get through that. And he's going through all these obstacles to try to get to the police officer, but then he like runs right past the officer and finds a fire hydrant in the middle of the desert, and then it moves away from the cartoon and says, "Oh, we've been censored by the network because the dog's making dog water or something." And so then it cuts back to him, and he's looking relieved, and then you see this big mushroom cloud like blow up in the back, and then Freakazoid, he's all burnt to a crisp, and he lands in front of the police officer. And so the dog did not save him. He wasn't terribly helpful. And then he said...
one more side note. I like still how, Kelly, you're calling him the police officer when, of course, Nathan, his name is...
Cosgrove?
Cosgrove, yes. But Kelly's new, folks. She hasn't watched Freakazoid growing up. She doesn't know it's Sergeant Cosgrove.
I should know. I may have seen him in other episodes, but
yeah, he's been in all 4, I think, so far.
But I literally have only just watched each episode once, so there's a lot of characters in these episodes.
Yes.
So I do know Lord Bravery now.
Yes, that's true.
I think I've got that one. Yeah. Because this is 4 episodes, and he's been in 2 of them.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and they really drove home his name in this next segment. So I think I got that one. Anyway, so he says, he had to get rid of him as being a sidekick, and
it had to come to an end.
Yeah, and then he's like biting his butt. He's like, my end.
Yes.
So, because at first you're a little nervous, and you're thinking, oh, what happened to the? I'm thinking like, what happened to the dog? Like, let's not go down that path.
Old Screamer.
Yeah, old Screamer.
No.
Bach Wolf, no.
Cute little puppy. Anyway, yeah. So that was about the end of it.
Yeah, and there we go. So that is the end of the Freakadog, Foamy the Freakadog's involvement on the show. So sad. But, of course, so prophetic as well, because, of course, we all know that Paul Rugg, years later, gets his own little Freakadog with Lucky the Chihuahua, who he's now... known throughout the world as the man who gets his fingers bitten by his own little chihuahuas.
Plus, the dogs like it so much, and it's a nice bonding experience. That's right. Good daddy's little boy. Daddy's little boy. Daddy's little boy. That's right. Okay, we're done.
So, good old Lucky. So, who would have known? Who would have known? So, Freakadog is real.
That cute dog.
He is the cutest dog. I just love how his little tongue sticks out when he's done biting Paul in those videos. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So, let's go ahead and talk about, let's see, any cultural references. I mean, there was the Jerry Springer thing, and I think that was pretty much it, I think, for references. this was the first time that we really got to see Cobra Queen in action, even though she really didn't say anything. And by the way, I counted how many times Foamy hit Freakazoid. There was the first time where, they're going after the terrorists, and Foamy starts bashing Freakazoid back and forth between two different cars. Mm-hmm. And my count is he hits him approximately 57 times, going back and forth. Because I realized, man, they're going back and forth a lot, even in the background when the terrorists are just talking about Chinese food.
Yeah.
So about 57 times. And then when Cobra Queen is later, trying to get Freakazoid, and Foamy sort of rescues him, he ends up hitting Freakazoid into a statue about approximately 23 more times.
Hi, Foamy, squeezy face. Look at your little face. The snake's really doing a number on me. Help! Help! Help!
So, all in all, you're talking about Freakazoid getting hit at least 80 times by Freakazoid, or by Foamy the Freakadog, I should say. So, there you are.
Wow.
Interesting little facts. But Nathan, let's start with you. Is there any little moments in this that you thought were of note?
Well, I wanted to point out that the Chinese restaurant, Hop Sing, they say, that's a Chinese cook from Bonanza, I guess.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I thought the name sounded a little familiar. I'm not really familiar with Hop Sing at all, other than...
I never watched Bonanza. I just took that from someone else.
It was on a long time. But yes, Hop Sing, yes. Which I'm not even sure if Hop Sing was actually portrayed by an Asian actor or not, which that's a whole other kettle of fish. So we won't talk about that. If that is the case. But anyway.
Yeah. And I guess that picture on the dog catchers thing could be a Wallace and Gromit reference with the wrong trousers.
Oh, really? What is it?
I don't know.
Because it kind of looked like Gromit?
A little bit like Gromit from Wallace and Gromit.
A little bit. I did think it was interesting that on the credits, by the way, that dog catcher, who's voiced by Rob Paulsen, in the credits it says Rob Paulsen and it says as himself. So that guy does not look at anything like Rob Paulsen, but it is definitely his natural voice, though. So there you go. Rob Paulsen as himself, the dog catcher.
Oh no! Please! Not Jerry Springer!
Okay, then we'll forget the whole thing.
Thank you.
And how about that, by the way, of Freakazoid just going crazy at the beginning, like the first of all the leap that he makes, the sound that he makes, the yee is so silly, and then making so much damage to everything. Dogs going loose. A store has the Freakmobile crashes through it.
Crashes into a donut store and then it explodes later.
The newsstand, he almost kills a dozen people just because of a broken taillight. How ridiculous. Kelly, any moments that really that stood out for you that you liked?
Nothing that I don't think I've already mentioned.
Well, I love the sweetmeats part. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what sweetmeats for the longest time were. But it is a confectionery food, by the way. And I looked up the word sweetmeats on Google, and it had a very interesting definition. It says, an item of confectionery or sweet food, as in, he hurried back to his room like a schoolboy who has stolen a sweetmeat. So I thought the word in context was just so funny, going back to your room like a schoolboy. Anyway, there you go. Sweetmeats. I remember this episode as a kid and just really liking Freakadog. I just... the ridiculous nature of the long setup of Freakadog running
to Cosgrove
and just going right by him to the fire hydrant.
I think we used to quote the making puppy water, or what is he? Making dog water.
Dog water.
So silly.
The following scene has been deleted by the network censors because it shows a pup making dog water.
Yeah, silly Freakazoid. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and move on to Lord Bravery next. And Office Visit was the second and final Lord Bravery segment. It was written by
Just
Paul.
Right when Kelly remembered his name.
Exactly. I think he makes some.
You may still see him.
You still see him every now and then. It was written by Paul Rugg, and it was directed by Eric Radomski. And Nathan, tell us what happens here in Office Visit.
So it turns out Lord Bravery can no longer use his name, Lord Bravery, because there's already Lord Bravery's bake shop. So he's at, whatever, the office, the trademark office, I guess.
Oh, look, why can't we both use the name Lord Bravery?
I'm afraid that would be too confusing.
Too confused? They're a bake shop, you stupid man! I'm a superhero!
Well, you never know. Someone could stop you on the street demanding a muffin or a scone. Someone else might run into the bake shop wanting to be saved from a carnivorous, man-eating vegetable creature. You see my point?
I can hurt you, I'm really quite strong.
As it just so happens, I have a database of pre-approved names of companies that aren't around anymore. Let's have a little look-see, shall we? Ah, here's one. Smoked meats and fishes.
Excuse me?
Smoked meats and fishes. What do you think?
Are you actually suggesting that my new battle cry should be "Fear not, smoked meats and fishes has arrived"?
You could put Lord in front of it.
They give him some other names that he could use. Maybe DreamWorks was one that caught his ear, but that one was taken and then taken again. And then so he asks, how can I get Lord Bravery? How can I get my old name back? And he says, just go to the bakery and have them change their name. So he goes there, and the lady there, she's like, I'd be happy to. I'd like to name it Helen's bakery shop. But she can't because there's already Helen's butchery shop. So they need to go to the butchery shop. Is that not what they're called?
Sure.
No, there's Helen's Butcher or something. So they go there, and the guy's name's Hank, and he wants to name it Hank's. But it turns out they keep going. They can't name it Hank because there's a Hank and Hardware or something. And there's Rudy's Rudimentary Twine and stuff like that. There's all these different places. But it all ends up going to Bill of Bill's World of Paint. And Bill doesn't want to change the name of Bill's World of Paint because his name is Bill. And they went through everyone's names. And so that's pretty much how it ends. And then, so we go to 6 months later, and he's trying to rescue someone from a tree. But they don't want him to help because they're like, what kind of name is Lord Fish Meats and what's his name?
Smoked meats and fishes.
And fishes. So, but then he's like, my name's actually Lord Bravery. And like, oh, well, can I have some scones? And then he chases that guy away. And that's how we leave Lord Bravery.
Goodbye, Lord Bravery. And by the way, how ridiculous that Lord Bravery is flying around the place. And then when he goes to rescue a boy who's in the tree, has to straddle this tree and climb it up like a normal person instead of just flying up there to get him.
I didn't understand that either.
Yeah, he's a ridiculous guy. So anyway, Kelly, what were some moments of this that amused you or were of note?
I thought it was kind of funny that they had to go from place to place, and like all these people had names in their businesses that weren't even their names, and none of them were actually clever enough to come up with something that didn't involve a name.
Yes.
So, I was surprised by that, but
except for Lord Bravery.
Yeah.
The only person. Helen was the most creative person.
Yeah, I like how Helen is just calling Lord Bravery such a stupid name, and he's just like, right.
Why would anyone want to be called Lord Bravery?
What kind of name is Lord Bravery? robbery anyway? It's stupid, dumb, idiotic.
Yeah, so, I think there is a little, sort of a reference, I would say, right here. There was the twine shop over here. What was it called? The
Rudys Hardware and Twine.
Yeah, Rudys Hardware and Twine is in reference to a hardware store that Paul Rugg actually grew up next to, which was called just Rudys Hardware Store. And on his blog, we'll have a link to it in our show notes, but he has a little article that he wrote back in 2009 called The Non-Self-Aware Woman at Rite Aid and What That Means. So he talks about Rudys Hardware and Twine, and a very interesting story talking about this woman wanting a black frame, or not wanting a black frame. Yeah, not wanting a black frame. Anyway, it's a very silly story. And he talks about how Rudys Hardware Store used to exist, and he misses it, essentially. So there you go. That's a reference to Paul Rugg's childhood. But Nathan, any moments in here that you thought were of note or interesting?
I think I saw a silhouette of Batman in one of the stores.
Oh, really?
But I mean, it was kind of blinking. It was in an antiques store.
Oh,
kind of weird.
Interesting.
So you can look out for that.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was Rodamski's Antiques. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take a look at it, and if I can find a Batman silhouette or something, I'll put it on our Instagram or something like that. The show, Batman and Freakazoid.
It might just be it's a cowl. It looks kind of like a.
Okay. Okay. Well,
I'm not seeing things. I'm not crazy.
Okay, Nathan. All right. Brian George voiced two characters in here, both Hank the Hardware Man and Mr. Snarzetti, the guy with the weird sideburns on that little bald guy. But Brian George, you might recognize him from Seinfeld. He played the character of, I think his name was Babu, I think. Remember him? He said, you're a very bad man.
Oh,
yes. I remember Babu. But anyway, he's quite an accomplished voice actor. He's done stuff on Animaniacs and now Freakazoid. But yeah, actually you can see him in front of the camera in a few roles as well over the years. So I thought that was of note. And really, I think the biggest cultural reference there is the whole thing about DreamWorks. And Kelly, I don't know if you remember this at all, but DreamWorks was actually sued by another company with the same name when it started up. There was a company named DreamWorks with a E instead of an O in the works part right there. And it was a trademark suit. Does any of this ring a bell? Because this was back in the mid-'90s when this happened.
No, I don't recall it. But I mean, obviously I paid attention to all the DreamWorks stuff because Spielberg. Because it's DreamWorks SKG is what it was. I think they've kind of dropped the SKG, but Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen. But no, I don't. I probably ran across it, but it didn't seem to be as much big news as like the actual creation of the studio.
Well, that's what they're referring to right there with it's being it's taken and now it's taken again because a Florida company, which was I think was a Florida company, was a promoter of science fiction conventions, and it was called DreamWorks, and they sued the actual company for millions of dollars. I'm assuming this was settled out of court, but it went on for a few years, I think from 95 or 6 to 8 or something like that. It was going in and out of court.
From what I'm seeing, it was initially thrown out, but then later upheld on appeal in 1998.
Yes, so I don't know how. I'm assuming it was just settled out of court. I'm assuming, especially after it went back. Like after a judgment. So yeah, it's a little piece in DreamWorks history right there. A little bump in the road when they started. There you go. So let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode with a few shorter segments. Starting off with Ode to Leonard Nimoy. And in Ode to Leonard Nimoy, Fanboy is back. And he recites a very stalkery poem all about Leonard Nimoy and how he loves him so much, and then it concludes with him going to Leonard Nimoy's house, finding out where he lives, and Leonard Nimoy does the right thing by blowing Fanboy up. You know, you gotta protect the house.
And gives him an autograph.
Oh, that's true. He did give him an autograph, and then he blew him up with a bomb.
Yeah.
I'll visit you right where you live. I'll ring on the doorbell and ask if you'll give that autograph I've been waiting for. You give it to me, and so much more. Oh, thank you, Mr. Spock. Now please call Bones. I need a duck.
But it is a very cute. It sounds almost Dr. Seuss-ish in how it goes. I know it's an ode, but it felt a little Dr. Seussy to me. But I thought it was cool. Any your thoughts, Kelly, Nathan, on Ode to Leonard Nimoy?
It was a reference to Bones.
Yes, reference to Bones on Star Trek. Kelly, anything from you?
I know so many people like that. I do, because I go to Dragon Con and conventions. So yeah, and I'm a fangirl myself. So, but as much as I joke about it, I still have never shown up on Steven Spielberg's front doorstep. So, and I never will.
Yes.
But
he has a
I would
security gate around his house.
If he would call me, so I can just tell him I'm a big fan. But I'm here, Steven. Give me a call. I just want to say hey, shake your hand, whatever. But yeah, I thought that was. It's kind of goofy. It's kind of stereotyping too. I felt like
It is. But it's relatable at the same time. And I actually thought, man, if I was more comfortable in my body, I would actually dress up as Fanboy at a convention. Just that FB shirt. And the thing that makes me say...
He's like wearing bikini bottoms.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes me go, no, and then second thought, never mind. Because those shorts, man, those shorts are something else. And he has that fall when he falls at the end.
Oh, gosh.
To show everybody... Those thighs. Boy, what legs. He's got legs and he knows how to use them. So, emergency broadcast system. Let's go on to the next part here. Freakazoid is a test of the emergency broadcast system. And Freakazoid does essentially what I remember hearing a lot over the years is... This is only a test, and the annoying beep that would happen. And, of course, Freakazoid does it, but he does it with his mouth and almost dies in the process. It was quite humorous. And he, talked about also what you would hear if it was an actual emergency.
This concludes our test of the emergency broadcasting system. This was only a test. If there had been an actual emergency, we would have gone like this.
Help! Help us! No! Get us out of here! Help me! Help everyone!
Which I used to actually make fun of myself even as a kid. I think it was on a radio I heard once, like, what would you hear in an actual emergency was, oh my God, the bombs are coming, ah! Like that's what you would hear. Anyway. It's true. So, let's go with that. Nathan, anything that you thought was cool in this quick little segment?
The animation when he turns like blue or something. One of the colors he looks.
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess he's already blue.
A deep purplish
turns
blue,
like
though.
Yeah, just like
the animation.
Some really funny.
The animation in this episode together is just really, really strong. I think, especially in the Freakadog one. I didn't mention it before, but he looks almost anime-ish, and his teeth and eyes. It looks so good. I really like the style of Freakazoid in that first segment. But Kelly, I know that your Foamy the Freakadog, Indiana, you said he was freaking out a little bit when he heard Freakazoid.
he would definitely was paying attention. I was watching it in the living room and had my phone out watching it, and he kind of lifted his head up and kind of started paying attention, and then he did that head tilt back and forth, which is really cute when he's really listening, and he stayed very focused until it finished. It was cute.
So even German Shepherds are watching Freakazoid these days.
Yep.
Well, let's wrap things up with our last small segment, which is Conversational Norwegian. And in this, Freakazoid teaches the audience a little bit of useful Norwegian phrases. I think Fanboy is actually rowing the Norwegian boat in this, so Fanboy gets yet another appearance in this episode. And he basically talks about the narwhal, and how, look at the happy narwhal when he crashes through the boat. The narwhal does not look that happy, though, I have to say. It looks kind of angry and then sad that he's done that. It all ends with Joe Leahy kind of drowning with with Freakazoid and Fanboy. The end. There you go. Kelly, anything from Conversational Norwegian that you thought were of note?
I just thought it was funny. Narwhals are funny to me. And
that's true. Such a weird creature.
Yeah, and I like the sound of all of it. The way he, the Norwegian, I guess. Whether that was real Norwegian or not, I don't know.
Oh, I think it had to be. If you know Norwegian, by the way, I know we do have a few international listeners to our show. If you do speak Norwegian, we'd love to know how accurate was Freakazoid's, portrayal of your language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
it sounds
saying,
cool.
Not only saying it right, but does it sound right?
Yeah, exactly.
Little narwhal, happy little narwhal.
Nathan.
Because I love languages, so it just sounded really neat to me.
Okay. Well, Nathan, what about you?
Reminded me of Frenching with Freakazoid.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that kind of, very educational, I guess, as long as it is educational. I don't know, but
languages are silly, and in fact, they sound goofy. In fact, Paul Rugg even put a version of him being bitten by Lucky the dog in Dutch on his Instagram, and I believe possibly on his YouTube as well, but it's just him getting bitten by Lucky, but it's all in Dutch, and it's quite humorous. Here's a little sample of that.
Hoe kom ik nou tot rust? Nou, zoals veel Amerikanen doen, ik kom thuis en aai mijn hond. Want kijk, je hond aaien is een van de meest rustgevende dingen die je maar kunt doen. Het maakt een hormoon vrij, genaamd oxytocin.
That's how Lucky would sound in Norwegian. So, there you are. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to our water tower rating. Well, guys, let's get to it. Out of 5 water towers, how many would you give this episode of Freakazoid? Nathan, let's start with you.
I mean, I gotta go back and give all these higher because I keep giving them 2. I'm gonna set it. I'm gonna say 3 water towers without even looking at what I gave previous episodes.
Okay.
So there we go. 3 water towers. It was fine. I really like Foamy the Freakadog. Just him talking to Foamy the Freakadog. I could just hear 30 minutes of that, I think, would be a 5-star episode. Just him making that high screech, screechy face. And so
all right.
There you go.
And Kelly, what about you?
I will give it... I guess I'll also give it 3. No, maybe 2.5.
Okay.
Because I didn't really laugh at anything. I did like the Norwegian part because, like I said, it sounded cool, and there was a dog. But I didn't find any of it particularly funny. It didn't bother me. I wasn't sitting there like, oh no, this is terrible. But I wasn't sitting there laughing out loud either. So yeah, it was okay.
All right. I will give it a 3.5. So we all average out to 3, right? That way. Because it's not as good as some of the previous episodes. But yeah, Foamy is such a great segment. I really did like that. I did like the Lord Bravery one. However, it was not as funny as the first Lord Bravery one. So it's good. It's not as good as some of the previous ones, I think, though, that we went over. So still great, but not as great. So there we go. In our next episode, by the way, talking about Freakazoid, not our next episode, but in a few weeks when we do talk about the next episode of Freakazoid, we're going to talk about how Freakazoid came to be with the chip. Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's different than what's on the DVDs.
Really?
The next episode on the DVD is the Cloud / Candlejack, which is just we never really talked about it, but Freakazoid would air these episodes that were just like conglomerates of other episodes occasionally.
Right.
They weren't like actual episodes, so they would take half of one. They're like, oh, this is a really popular segment. Like the Cloud and Candlejack, like that would be a great episode of its own if it existed, because those are both great segments. But if people get confused, it's going to be the chip.
So we're going to be talking about the chip next. Okay.
Are we we're gonna do both together?
Yeah, I think so. Might as well. We'll get both in because it's one. It's just a larger story, and there we go. So. And Kelly, do you know what episode of Tiny Toons we'll be talking about next, or do you want to skip that, or?
Well, no, I think we should watch Immature Radioactive Samurai Slugs.
Yay! And I'm very happy about that because I got an awesome shirt that's available in our TeePublic store that you can check out. It's tpublic.animaniacast.com, of course. But I got an Immature Radioactive Samurai Slugs shirt. And I wore it to Disneyland recently, and I had a lot of people stopping me and saying, that shirt's so cool. They didn't get the reference, but they thought it was a cool shirt. So, I'm very excited. So we get to talk about Immature Radioactive Samurai Slugs and sing that song and everything. So that'll be on our next review episode of Tiny Toons. Well, let's go ahead and get to some contact information. Nathan, where can people get in contact with you online?
I am on Twitter. DjangoFT, that's me.
And Kelly, what about you?
I'm also on Twitter, Yoda Princess, YODAPRNCSS, or email me, Kelly at BigShinyRobot.com.
All right, and as for the Animaniacast, we are on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And you can also talk to us over on Discord. If you want a welcome link, you can go to discord.animaniacast.com, and that will bring you on over to the RetroZap Discord group, where you can talk to us about Animaniacs or cartoons, and you can talk to the other RetroZap groups about all other things, like Ardcast, they're talking about video games. You got Brews and Blasters talking about Star Wars, and of course there's a whole Star Wars section about collecting with the Dork Lair and Kanata's Castle. We got a ton of people over there. Techno Retro Dads to talk about everything retro you want to talk about. It's a fantastic place and great people over there. So love to see you over there. Discord.animaniacast.com and head to retrozap.com for all of your retro needs. Lots of articles every single day. And the podcast network. You can subscribe to the podcast feed on your favorite podcast player. You can get every RetroZap podcast, including this one, delivered straight to your device for free. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. So for Nathan and Kelly, this is Joey saying good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
This podcast is not endorsed by Warner Brothers or Amblin Entertainment and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures, Freakazoid, the Warner Brothers logo, all names, pictures, and sounds are registered trademarks and or copyrights of their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Animaniacast unless otherwise indicated.
What kind of superhero superhero would call himself Lord Smoked Meats and Fishes?
Ah, one who wants to use the element of surprise.
Oh, you're a loon, aren't you?